Hello everybody, I'm going to talk about an illustrated history of the USA, the Civil War. On March 4, 1861, when Abraham Lincoln won election as the first Republican president pleading to keep slavery out of the territories, convincing many Southerners that slavery will soon come to an end, and he warned that it does not allow them to break the United States by separating. Seven slave states in the Deep South seceded and formed a new nation, the Confederate States of America. The North was much stronger than the South. It had a population of 22 million people. The South had only 9 million people and 3 million of them were slaves. The economy of the North was based on business and factories without the need for slaves because they thought that it was not right. In the South, the economy was based on agriculture and farm, depending on slaves to work crops and so on. On April 12, Confederate guns opened fire on Fort Sumter, a fortress in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina, that was occupied by United States troops. These shots marked the beginning of the American Civil War. However, the North could win the war to invade the South and occupy its lands, and the South did not need to conquer the North to win the independence. All it had to do was to hold out until the people of the North grew tired of fighting. The war fought into main areas in Virginia and other East Coast states of the Confederacy and in the Mississippi Valley. For the North Union force in the Mississippi Valley had more success. In April 1862, a naval officer named David Farragut sailed Union ships into the mouth of the river and captured New Orleans, the largest city in the Confederacy. On July 4, Vicksburg surrendered to a Union army led by General Ulysses Grant. Its fall was a heavy blow to the South. In the last week of June 1863, many Northerners were fired of the war. General Lee, the Confederate commander, marched his army north in Pennsylvania. In 3 days of fires, fearing more than 50,000 men were killed or wounded. The Confederate army had suffered a defeat from which it would never recover. In 1865, it was declared that slavery was illegal by the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, and it decided finally that the United States was own nation whose parts could not be separated. By 1870, all the southern states had new Reconstruction governments. Most were made up of blacks. A few white Southerners who were willing to work with them and white men from the North. However, many of the new black members of the state assemblies were inexperienced and poorly educated. By the Reconstruction governments, they passed laws to provide care for orphans and the blind, to encourage new industries and the building of railroads, and to build schools for both white and black children. However, some disagreed the use of violence, and fear helped white racists to win black control of the South. Even there was a secret society called the Ku Klux Klan, beating and killing any blacks who tried to improve their position. The 14th Amendment it was the foundation of the civil rights movement of the 1950 and 1960 and made it possible for Martin Luther King to cry out eventually on behalf of all black Americans, free at last, free at last. Years of growth. Miners, railroads, and cattlemen. 1848, the gold was found in California by John Sutter when they were building a sawmill. As men and women from all over the territory hurried to the gold fields to make themselves rich. By the spring of 1849, people from all over the world were rushing to California to look for gold. In the next 20 years, gold discoveries attract fortune seekers to other parts of the far west. As mountains of Nevada and Colorado in 1860, they had moved into Montana, and Wyoming, and 1870 Black Hills of the Dakota. In the middle of 19th century, Amerindian hunters such as the Sioux, they depend of the buffaloes. To eat its meat, they make clothes from its skin, they shave its bone into knives and tools, etc. In 1890, the separate areas of settlements of the Pacific coast and along the Mississippi River had moved together, and the most important factors in American life ever since the time of the Pilgrims had disappeared. In 1860, the railroad workers' progress depends mainly on the land over which they had to build among the rocks and cliffs of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Their progress was slower. New towns grew up where cattle trails meet the railroads. The first of these cattle towns was Abilene in Kansas. In 1867, cowboys drove 36,000 cattle there along the Chisholm Trail from Texas, and other cattle towns were built, forming the Great Plains. In 1862, the Congress found time to pass a law called the Homestead Act offered free farms in the West, so could immigrants who intended to become citizens, if they wanted to have the land, this was there after 5 years, or if they wanted it faster, they had to buy it. In addition, the government offers land to the railroad companies to increase their profits, and they shipped immigrants across the Atlantic, gave them free railroads transport to the West, and often helped them to start their farms and communities. But there was a problem, and the plain did not have trees for the construction of their homes, and water was very scarce. Sometimes in the summers everything burned. Therefore, some returned to their territories and other states and eventually faced this problem. The Amerindian Last Stand. Amerindian peoples, like the Sioux, lived by hunting the buffaloes. That they needed food, clothing, tools, homes, they usually let them pass without trouble. The Black Hills of Dakota are sacred to the Indians. In 1868, the United States recognized the Black Hills as part of the Great Sioux Reservation, set aside for exclusive use by the Sioux people. In 1874, however, General George led an expedition into the Black Hills, accompanied by miners who were seeking gold. Once gold was found, miners were soon moving into the Sioux hunting grounds and demanding protection from the United States Army. Soon, the army was ordered to move against wandering bands of Sioux hunting on the range in accordance with their treaty rights. In 1876, Custer, who led an expedition into the Black, leading an army detachment, encountered the encampment of Sioux and Cheyenne at the Little Bighorn River. Custer's detachment was annihilated, but the United States would continue its battle against the Sioux in the Black Hills until the government confiscated the land in 1877. To this day, ownership of the Black Hills remains the subject of a legal dispute between the USA government and the Sioux. Inventors and industries. In 1876, the exhibition Centennial Exposition by President Ulysses it had been organized to celebrate the United States' 100th birthday as an independent nation by showing some of its achievements. The main attraction was the machinery hall. This was a big wooden building that covered more than 12 acres. Inside it, visitors could see such recent American inventions as the typewriter and the telephone, as well as machines for countless other used for sewing, grading, screen, printing, drilling, pumping, and hammering. Railroads were very important in this growth of manufacturing, was amount of coal and iron were used to make steel for their rails, locomotives, freight wagons, and passenger cars. During the 19th century, they developed thousands of products to make life easier, safer, or more enjoyable for people. Thomas Edison, he was born in 1847 and died in 1931. He made more than 1,000 original inventions. Edison had his greatest success in making practical use of electricity. In 1878, he formed the Edison Electric Light Company to capture from gas the huge market for lighting homes, streets, and places of work. To Edison, they built complete electricity generating systems to provide his bulb with power. He developed dynamos to produce the electricity underground cables to carry it to where it was near fuse boxes to make it safe to use. Ella Whitney, an American system. Whitney, who invented the current gene, but too many people copied his original machine without paying him anything. However, in 1800, Whitney began to make guns. Whitney's way of working meant that guns could now be made by men without enough skill to make a complete gun. He had worked out the main ideas of a way of manufacturing that would later become known as the American. Henry Ford and mass production. Henry Ford, he is famous for making automobiles for convert the automobile from an expensive curiosity into a practical convenience that would profoundly impact the landscape of the 20th century. His introduction of the Model T automobile revolutionized transportation and American industry. As the owner of the Ford Motor Company, he became one of the richest and best known people in the world. The United States was a land that was supposed to offer equal opportunities to everyone. Yet now it seemed that the country was coming under the control of a handful of rich and powerful men who were able to do more or less anything they wished. By 1900, the United States was the richest and most productive industrial country in the world. Many people labored for long hours in factories, mills, and workshops. Many lived in cities for growing industrial centers like Pittsburgh and Chicago needed more and more workers. In later, the progressive spinning mills the usual working week was 62 hours for wages that became president and in 19 often the work was unhealthy, of dangerous. In one plant belonging to the United States Steel Corporation, 46 men were killed in 1906 by burns, explosions, electric shocks, suffocation, falling objects, or by being crushed. He wanted to allow businessmen enough freedom of action to make their firms efficient and prosperous, but at the same time to prevent them from taking unfair advantage of other people. For instance, Roosevelt pointed out that unless action were taken to slow down the destruction of the country's forests, mineral resources, and soil fertility, Americans would soon discover that much of the natural wealth to the United States had been destroyed forever. In the next 20 years, American governments often acted upon Roosevelt's corollary. American soldiers landed in countries like Nicaragua, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and took over their governments for years at a time. Often, the Americans made big improvements paying off debts, draining swamps, building roads, but this did not stop Latin Americans from resenting their interference. Thanks for your attention.